Hey guys, we're going to do an MET for the lumbar spine to improve flexion. So a lot of people get stuck in extension through the lower back because of basically the way we live our lives, right? We're sitting in chairs all the time, flexed forward, hunched over and get very tight through here. So flexion becomes a position that becomes quite tight and restricted through the lumbar spine especially. So for this MET, what we need to do is we need to trust our palpation. And we're going to use our fingertips on the spinous processes. And what we're going to try to do is get a sense of the opening between each of those spinous processes as we move the person into flexion. When we work our way up through the spine with this technique, we're going to find particular levels where those spinous processes don't separate very well as they come into flexion, and that's the point where we need to apply the MET. So I'm going to start now on the lower back, at the very lower part of the lower back, palpating those spinous processes, putting our hands underneath the heels, and I'm using his knees on the inside of my lower thigh here, my left leg. And what I'm going to do is use my hips and my hands to move his hips into flexion, and that in turn, with that hip flexion, starts to flex the lower back. So the further I take his legs up towards his chest, the further I impact that flexion up the back. So if I was to bring his legs right up towards his chest, obviously get flexion right through. If I do the first part of that movement, I start to get the lower part. So what we're trying to do here is begin with one section of the lower back and then assess that for movement. So I'm doing small movements, oscillate backwards and forwards to try to identify or sense the gapping between those two lower spinous processes. And I can feel that moving. So I move up to the next two, come into a little bit more flexion, and I can feel those moving now. Come up to the next two, and I can feel those two not moving so well. So what I'm going to do here, there's a couple of different ways we can MET this, but I'm going to basically palpate those 2 points and ask the patient here to push his knees down into my left thigh, which is going to create a little bit of extension and activation of those muscles that might be restricting that lumbar flexion. So my patient pushes down gently into my leg. You'll feel those little lumbar extensors turn on. We hold that very light contraction for 7 to 10 seconds. And then he relaxes, and then I attempt to move that a little bit further into flexion. And what we're hoping to feel is those two spinous processes gapping apart, opening up a little bit more than they did before. And we can work our way from segment to segment up. When we feel one that's not moving, again, we palpate that point, ask him to extend 7 to 10 seconds. After that period, hopefully we can get it to mobilize, move a little bit further, and that's how we can MET the lumbar spine for flexion.